Hey, Mike.
Hey Bob, how you doing?
Good. Welcome back to the SquadCast. Welcome back to everybody. Uh, it's March. It's almost spring.
No,
No, okay, no,
no, we don't have any more seasons. We
no more
just have
seasons.
we have days. Today is a winter day. Tomorrow is a summer day.
Yeah,
It's
I'll
it's
give
just
you that. I'll give you that.
it's just days now.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, what's going on? What have you noticed in the world the past week? I have some things I want to talk about, but
Well, how much of the world are you referring to? It's a big world out there.
let's keep it to nerdy stuff.
To nerdy stuff. There was a time when politics was considered nerdy stuff.
We can leave that alone.
Yeah, now it's considered the end of humanity as we know it.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I'm reading this reprint of some of the Strontium Dog stories that published by 2000 AD in the 1990s or something. The Jerome Red stories, and they're
Right.
really good. They're really good. Um, Man, I'm a big Iskier fan anyway, but the storytelling is so fluid and the characters are interesting and they're playing off of one another. It's been a while since I've been able to just sort of sit back and indulge in some of that late 20th century 2000 AD fantasy. It's a negative look at where we're headed, but it's hilarious nonetheless. Which I think is the right attitude to have right now. So that's what I've been doing. Keeping
Um,
up with whatever.
That's good. There were some pictures. They are filming Superman,
They are.
and it's just Superman. Have you heard
Yes.
that?
Yeah, it's no longer legacy.
I like that.
I sure.
I mean, all of this is all. It doesn't matter. We're going to talk about this. It's not going to be out for another 15 months.
Right.
Um, people are gonna talk about it, and all of it is unimportant until we actually see the film. Just like
Right.
all of it is just speculation. I walked into my comic shop last week, um, and there was a guy at the counter, and he was talking about. I walked into the conversation, and the person was saying, "Well, you know, I think it was related to moving somebody around in the Marvel universe in the MCU, being some other character." I caught the end of it. He's like, "Oh, well, they're doing that with Aquaman, and there's this rumor out there of, which is complete rumor and probably never going to happen, of Jason Momoa playing Lobo, um, and that's the concept that we have to kind of get away from and say, hey, this is rumor. It's not real until they actually tell us it's real. And even if they tell us it's real, we don't know what's going to be like.
That's very true. It isn't an act of cynicism to say, "Hey, Sherry, happy birthday." It isn't an act of cynicism to say what we hear and read and see is not necessarily true. Now, this has always been the case. It's just faster now. We
Right.
create, because of all of the tubes and wires, we create bullshit at the speed of light.
Absolutely. I want to
You
talk
know,
about that actual concept and how that's changed. And that was one of the things I had on the list for tonight. So one of the like kind of the big nerdy news of the weekend that's filling up my TikTok feed and whatever is Dune 2 came out. And you haven't seen it, right?
I haven't seen the first one.
Did you see the
I love the
84?
book.
Did you
Yeah,
see it?
that was
Okay.
1,000 years ago, and I didn't like it.
Okay. You should watch the first one.
That's what I'm told.
I haven't seen the second one yet, but I want to talk about, you like the book. So it was what, 66? Is
Yeah,
that when Dune came out? And
something like that.
you were in that age group, right? So you were a sci-fi comic book superhero fantasy nerd. at the time,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
How did that work at that time, right?
It's actually weirder now than then. I mean,
Okay.
when I was 19, I was 16 in 1966. I turned
Right.
16. I was 15 for most of the year,
Mhm.
and I was reading science fiction and mysteries and popular fiction like nobody's business. In addition to the comic books, and of
Right.
course, listening to rock and roll
Right.
and the blues. So I was
As
deeply
one should be
invested in
doing.
those. Oh
A-
yeah, particularly
As
when
a
you're
teenager should be
16.
doing. Yes.
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I was reading things like Foundation, and I was reading a lot of Philip K. Dick because I'm 16 and that's what 16-year-olds do.
Right.
And Dune and Riverworld. And so many of those projects in the last 5 years have become streaming TV shows and movies.
Sure.
You know, well, they're all being made by people who are much younger than me, which is about 92% of Earth. And obviously, they're not getting what I got from the book. Times are from those books. Times are totally different. Maybe with Philip K. Dick. But otherwise, these are interpretations that I'm sure work for most people out there, but don't jive with my experiences back in the 60s, which is fine. The world should work like that. I'm not complaining.
Right.
It's just not exactly the same thing. I did not care for Foundation. I haven't watched most of it. Some of the Dick adaptations are very good. Some of them get the point but aren't very good. That's just how science fiction rolls these days.
So, like David, I think that despite David Lynch's film generally being perceived as not good,
Yeah.
I think that was very important. If David Lynch's film didn't exist, I don't think we would have the Denis Villeneuve films.
That's possible.
But there is it's interesting how the different generations are learning about it. For example, people are they're looking at Dune and they're like, then they look back at Star Wars and they're like, there's a lot there that came from here. How did that happen? Right. And, I mean, Paul Atreides is Anakin Skywalker. There's a lot of, similarities. And we know how much, George Lucas, was a big fan of Dune. But how did you know to read Dune?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I have no recollection of who turned me on to it, and it could have been fanzines. I could have just read about it,
Okay.
In fanzines. It was so long ago, I do not recall, but it was already established shortly after it came out that this is the book to read, or at least, it should be high up on your want to read list. And science fiction was a lot more fun for me back then because my mind was in a more expansive mood and I wasn't creating that stuff. No, I wasn't high at the time. That was later. But
not much later.
Well, a year or two, come on. And it's all because of Dune.
It's all because of Dune, because of the spice.
Yeah, right. No, not at all. Not at all. But there's also a fairly cynical and often dark edge to those books. Maybe not so much Foundation, but certainly Philip K. Dick stuff. Absolutely. And being 16 and I was already involved in political work a little bit since I was 15. So I did have that 16-year-old's dark vision of reality.
Yeah.
And that grew with me just as science fiction sort of kind of moved into that. Comics came along after that, a couple years after that. Guys like Denny O'Neil, who were science fiction writers and science fiction fans, and we're reading all of this stuff, and we're all about the same age.
Right.
You know, Denny was a few years older than me. Um, so we all embraced that and brought it into comics, but we had to kind of sneak it in because the people involved in running the businesses, less so at Marvel, but certainly at the other places, all the other places, thought that their readers were still 11.
Right.
And that
And
wasn't true.
I'm glad again that's we're back to one of the things that you should take some level of credit, whether you take it or not. I'm giving you some level of credit for for what you did, at first, and that type of raising the aiming bar of where you were taking comics is important. I think it's what has kept the medium moving. I think the fact that we now have multiple sight lines for different age groups in the medium is important.
I wanted to see that happen long before it actually did. When I was at DC in the 70s, we had a meeting with our advertising rep, and they were doing a survey, and I was asked for my opinions about the survey. And I said, well, nobody over 12 years old is going to fill out this survey because, they're all questions for kids. And people are just going to just not relate to it if they're older. And most of our audience was too old for that. And they both looked at me, they both meaning the ad director from the ad agency and Saul Harrison, who was president of DC Comics at the time, and said, whether we know that or not, these are where the advertising dollars are. So this is how the survey is going to go. To which I ultimately responded, well, if we're locking out the people who are paying for the comics, and we're still locking out half the audience, that being women, who's going to buy comic books 5 years from now, 10 years from now? We need to cover all bases. We're a public communications forum. Well, I was just a rabble rouser back then, as opposed to now where I'm an old rabble rouser.
Right.
And they didn't like that. But I started to push DC into directions, mostly going more after the fan market than the older reader market. They understood the fan market. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about the younger people on staff, Paul Levitz and Jack Harris and guys like that. I'm talking about, the people who ran the joint. Jeanette Kahn had a good understanding of that. Yeah. And she had a better understanding of what made Marvel work. So we were able to get through that, but it was just a huge uphill battle. Huge.
Well, I'm glad that I think it's changing. I feel it's better, and it's taken a long time, but I'm glad for what you've done in that. We have two guests coming tonight. In case I haven't said that, and I don't think I have, we have two fantastic guests coming. We're going to get to Dean Haspiel in just a minute, and shortly after that, we're going to bring in Dan Parent, who's new to the show, but not new to us or comics or anything like that. We're just glad to have him. Dean is going to join us in person tonight instead of in comments. But I want to talk about just some books that are coming out this week that I want to let our viewers know about, and we can talk about. So this is a graphic novel that's coming out this week it is from Oni, and Oni is doing some interesting things. Oni is, I felt, if you asked me 6 months ago, is Oni going to be doing anything interesting? I would have said no. I disagree. I would change that now. I'm interested in what Oni's doing, what they're putting out. This is a really interesting concept about there's an age-old prophecy, and there's some great sorcerer battle that split people into multiple pieces, and this person has to get multiple pieces of themselves to get back and try and save the universe. I don't know. It seems fun. I think it's interesting. This one, I'm sure have you read it already?
No, I haven't.
I'm sure.
I haven't read it. I'm predisposed to like skipping over Batman stuff.
I am too at this point
because there's just so much of it. But this is an interesting concept. They've done this basic concept before. But I saw that Dan Jurgens wrote it. I thought, well, Dan knows what he's doing. Dan's a damn good writer, and
Mike's a damn good penciler. So I'm excited.
That's true.
I'm a huge fan of Mike, and I'm a huge fan of Dan's work. So this is Batman: The First Night. This takes place in 1939. It's one of Batman, going back to like one of Batman's first episodes or stories. Written by Dan Jurgens, art by Mike Perkins, and colors by Mike Spicer, and that's a fantastic team. And I'm sorry that I think it was announced when I saw Dan in Columbus. We didn't talk too much about it. I think he mentioned it, I had said we were more interested in talking about his experiences on Flash Gordon, but
that's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other thing.
Dan has been one of DC's hidden assets, a major talent over there. Yep. You look back at the last 30, 40 years of the stuff he's been doing, and he should be on postage stamps.
Yeah. And also coming out tomorrow is Betty and Veronica Friends Forever Sleepover special, written and drawn by Dan Parent. So we're excited about that. We can talk about that in a little bit. I am very interested in this. I'm interested in it only because this is a adaptation of what happened like after The Fog, the movie, the John Carpenter movie. I'm most interested in it because it's not done by John Carpenter's comic book company. It's by Massive. So I find that to be interesting. I don't know if it's going to be any good, but it's coming out tomorrow. This is a YA book. I feel awful, and it is again from Oni, and it's a young witch in London who is trying to figure out where she belongs and how it works, and I think people should check this stuff out.
And if it doesn't work, maybe she can get a job with Sabrina over at Archie.
Yeah, Marchie, right? I know you're interested in this.
I am.
So this is written by Iman Vellani. You know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think Ms. Marvel's fun. I think she's interested. I think as much as my conversation in the comic shop the other day was also that I'm done with X-Men. I can't wait for the reboot because I've had enough of this story. I do continue to read Ms. Marvel. I think that most people, particularly Iman gets her. Most people who write her get her, and she's an interesting character to read consistently. Like her stories are not boring at this point.
Actually, she's become one of my absolute favorites in the movies and TV shows.
Sure.
And it's not her quite as much as her family.
Sure.
Her family is fabulous.
Also coming out tomorrow or today, Nothing Special, which is in stores. I know it's in Barnes and Noble today because Katie sent a picture that is actually out there. Katie Cook's Nothing Special. If you haven't seen the episode a couple weeks ago where we had Katie Cook on, go back and watch that. It was really great. We talked about this book. It's coming out tomorrow. This one I'm interested in this for two reasons. One, it's set up to be an ongoing between Miles and Peter, which is I find kind of interesting to see how this goes. But the other part is it's written by Greg Weisman with art by Humberto Ramos. So Greg Weisman knows how to tell a story.
I respect him more than I can say.
Really?
he was he had the entry level job when I was at DC in the 80s, late 80s, which was, the Xerox boy, the photocopier.
Sure.
That's how you get in.
Right. Many
It
people
helps.
have had that job.
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. He was good at it, but like most of his predecessors and successors, he just got a lot of shit. It's like, where are my Xeroxes, boy? A lot of that stuff from people who knew better. From people who knew better. Since the Xerox machine was closest to my office anyway, he and I became friends, and I really respected him, and I got to know a little bit about how he thought. So I wasn't surprised to see him go into animation and go into writing comics. And he's had a fabulous career at both.
Yes.
And if anybody in the world had a good reason to say, no, to hell with this, these people suck, it would be him.
That's great.
And
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, and he just rose above the madness and made it work. So I respect the hell out of him.
That's awesome. This one is interesting too.
It is.
So, were you a fan of Torpedo 1936?
I was. I can't say I was the world's biggest fan because it ran forever,
Right.
And Alex Toth was involved, and when Alex Toth wasn't involved, it was oh my God, Alex Toth is not here issue.
It was interesting. I was doing some research on that and why he left. It was interesting.
Alex was an interesting guy.
Well, sure. The word that is out that's been published is that he left because he wasn't comfortable with the more mature, cynical approach that the writer kind of was heading, and it wasn't his bag, I guess. But Eduardo Rizzo sounds like a great option to bring this story a little bit more forward. I'm interested in it.
I'm interested. I'm very curious. It's a character that has a reputation, has been around forever. People in the States may not be as familiar with it.
Sure. It was like early. It was 80s.
Yeah. So this is a good thing. Let's get some characters that people aren't familiar with that have a history. Let's get them out before our readers here in the States. Those of you who are not in the States and grew bored with Torpedo decades ago, I get that.
Well, it's interesting. It's an Ablaze book, and they've been putting together some interesting groups of people, and I think that's a great setup. I'm looking forward to that. All right, so I want to let people know that at this moment you should click the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed yet to this, wherever you are, whether on Facebook or Instagram or Twitch. Please do that. Also, make sure you go to popculturesquad.com, and on the right-hand corner, you will see a subscribe button. If you subscribe to that, you'll get it added to our mailing list, so you'll get our updates and our weekly, rundown of what happened here on Pop Culture Squad. We're going to bring in our first guest. They've been waiting long enough. All of you have been waiting long enough. We have, luckily tonight, in-house in the show, instead of just in the comment stream, we're going to bring in Dean Haspiel right about now. Hey, Dino.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Wow, you sound great. You have like reverb in your voice.
Oh, okay. Well, it could be because I have a closed door in my studio and there's an echo.
It sounds great. No, it sounds wonderful. Don't worry.
Oh,
okay. We're just messing with you.
Either that or Charlton Heston has touched you somehow.
In which way?
I don't know.
I wasn't there.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Um,
And I wasn't watching. No, I don't know. Hey guys, how's it going?
good.
Right.
I want to know. I want to know what's up with you. I think we have some. Hang on. Let me grab this up because I got something I want to add to the screen here.
Thanks for the intro, by the way, and for adding my recent Kickstarters, the last two before the new one. That's
Well,
really cool.
it's.
You know?
I apologize that it's not completely. It should be even. I would like to get the new one up there too. So I didn't get a chance.
That's okay.
It is good stuff. But
Thank you.
all right.
You.
So
The
let
new
us talk
Kickstarter
about.
is still going.
Oh,
Yes.
it's going till March 28th, I believe.
Okay,
it's got like another 22 days or something like that. So that's why I want to
You
talk
are-
to you guys early.
You are
so that-
90% funded.
Yeah. But we all know about funding. We all know about Kickstarters, right? Like you lowball what you want your goal to be in hopes of getting, double that, triple that, whatever,
You're gonna
that's
get there. Well,
I'll get there, and that's really cool. It's really exciting, like this is my third Kickstarter, and like I never even thought I'd ever do a Kickstarter until I did it last year, and it's always
it's funny. It's funny because I think of you as an independent spirit and as an independent creator, and this is your third Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And I would have thought that we would have gotten some more of this because it's definitely a place where your stuff will, I think, continue to thrive. Tell us about this book. Tell us about this book, and we'll talk about some more.
All right. Well, and in terms of the spirit you're talking about, I think it's also a case of that I was too indie for the mainstream and too mainstream for the indie world. So I'm in this weird middle space, that I think other cartoonists occupy as well, and I think is also one of the reasons why people crowdfund. I mean, people crowdfund for many, many reasons. I pitched COVID Cop to a bunch of publishers. I pitched it, towards the end of when people were starting to get, shots for the virus and whatnot. And they probably were like, this is too soon, like we don't want to have this kind of characterization, wait, did I lose you guys? Am I here?
No,
okay.
I'm just trying to figure out I'm playing with the little things. Just keep talking.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so like I decided, well, like I want to see this comic happen. And I basically drew the whole thing right before I pulled the trigger on that Kickstarter. So while the Kickstarter campaign was going, I was coloring and lettering it, right? So that it could, hey Sherry, how you doing? And so, that's why it came out pretty immediately afterwards. And I wanted my first Kickstarter to just be like a bang zoom, to the moon, Alice type thing. I wanted to people to let, whoever showed up for me to know that they're in good hands. Hopefully they like the material, but it fell in their laps pretty soon after the campaign, Same thing with Holy Dogma. With this one, I'm actually drawing, I'm on page 8 of 24. So it means that, I'll be done with it like end of April, probably. And then pull the trigger and it'll be in people's laps, and in May or something like that.
Great.
That's perfect. And that's good because, and listen, that's the thing. Like, I'm doing better. I'm getting paid when it does well. I'm getting paid more than any publisher would pay me for something that I own,
Right.
And even if I was doing Spider-Man or Batman, I'm getting paid more this way than if I was doing a franchise comic, where they give you a pretty good, page rate, let's say. Although they don't necessarily raise the page rates once they determine your page rate.
Right.
I was talking to a couple other professionals that haven't had their page rates changed since the 1980s.
Yeah, we've been having those conversations.
It's just insane,
That's almost a weekly conversation here. But as we know, and those of you out there in viewerland know from going to conventions, that's pretty much all we talk about at conventions, other than, what's good for lunch.
What are you working on or whatever? I was at the last Baltimore Comic-Con, which Bob was at, and I think, Mike, were you at Baltimore Comic-Con? I can't remember.
Always there. They can't get rid of me.
Right. So, but I remember having about a 90-minute, well, I don't know if it was a conversation, but monologue from Chris Claremont explaining not only what he had planned to do with the X-Men, before he was off the book, but how he would take all the current stories of X-Men and then fix them to then get back to where he needs to go next. And it was an incredible conversation, or theater of sorts.
Yes, I love those. I love those conversations where we're all just sitting around listening to this person,
And we're fans. We're 12 years old again. You
Yeah,
become 12 years old again. And that's half the reason why we still do comics, is because it makes us 12 years old. And of course, then we have the business. We have the business acumen of a 12-year-old, right? So, and that's the other thing I'm trying to learn about Kickstarter here is that, and thanks for showing this, is like there are two kind of setbacks for me when I do a Kickstarter. One is I don't create a bundle or anything necessarily for retailers, right? Because I'm trying to squeeze out as much of the juice as possible for me, because I need to pay the artist. I live in New York City. I'm a native New Yorker. I don't think I'm moving, just to go make comics in Nebraska or something, or wherever a cheap place might be. This is where
Arkansas is the cheap place,
or Arkansas, right?
There's a reason for that.
I know.
There's a reason.
Well, and also I live small. I realized recently, and I've been writing. I might make a little essay out of this. Is I never dreamed bigger than a work for hire paycheck.
Sure.
Because when I was 12, my dream was to draw the Fantastic Four one day, right? And 35 years after my 12-year-old dream, I did draw Canon FF a little bit, right? But at the end of the day, I wasn't shooting higher than that, or I was doing things sideways. I had dreams, or I was a fan of the Marvel and DC material, and then I'm creating my own stuff on the side, right? And hoping that if people liked what I did over there, they might like what I'm doing over here. You know how it works,
Sure. It's a great it's the great concept of how things have changed. There used to be, I talk about this a bunch, that it used to be that people would, kind of, hope that they could get a little thing at DC or Marvel, so that then they could go make their own thing, or do their own thing just a little bit, so that they could then get the job at DC and Marvel and then stay there for a while. And now it's very much like people work for DC and Marvel just for the paycheck, so that they can do their own thing. Like
or they get poached from Image. Like they'll do a miniseries at Image Comics, and then suddenly, like, wow, could you work on Spider-Man or something?
Right. It's
right. But there's another reason too, I think.
Art and Chaos. That's my girlfriend Jen.
That's great. It is. Hi Jen. Thanks for watching.
You get into this, and you want to write or draw Batman or Spider-Man because that was your favorite character as a kid. That part of you probably isn't going to go away. So no matter how you've established that by doing your own stuff and then getting noticed, or somehow getting in the front door over at Marvel and DC, the only reason, and I'm not putting Marvel and DC down here at all, the only reason to work for them is that you want to play with their characters.
Yep.
Something to do with that. You have something involvement with that. Otherwise, I mean, if you're going to sell them your character, then it's no longer your character. And ultimately, you're still going to have to do it their way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Want to protect your artistic freedom, then we go your route, Dean.
Well, I mean, and by the way, I'm doing my versions of some of, I'm amalgamating some of my favorite characters and putting them into this character, and everybody, I think that's what happens. Well, we're so heavily influenced by our pop culture gods. This is our American mythology that we're riffing off of.
I mean, it's interesting because you and I, the first time I interviewed you, which was 6 years ago, I said that I saw a lot of you in Sambrosia. And
Especially that ass, right? Especially that.
well,
ass.
what I'm wondering is how come you don't have that? Look, what's up with you over here with the little chubbier in the middle? Then what's going on?
Well, first of all, I'm actually probably chubbier than that. Like that was just me making an attempt at just drawing something. I'll probably look closer to the way I really look inside the comic book, but I needed an image at the time that kind of sold the idea. I was kind of riffing off a little bit on Spider-Man number 50 when Peter Parker's walking away from the garbage can. With
Sure, no, absolutely.
Same idea,
I'm just busting on you here.
No, I know.
But I want you to tell us about this book. Tell us what is this story? I mean,
right.
It's a meta memoir. We've kind of talked about, but what are people going to get out of this?
Well, so I was trying to think about first of all, I feel like Kickstarter is probably the third biggest comic book publisher, if not the biggest comic book publisher right now.
Yeah.
Every day there's a new launch, I'm sure.
Right now, I mean, in January and February, it was a little bit, it is packed right now. So
it's insane.
You're getting a lot of good funding, and you're doing well. It's a very packed market right today.
No, it's bananas. And also what's cool about Kickstarter is you can do more adult oriented fare. It's almost like a more of a no permissions, no apologies policy,
Yeah, absolutely.
Ekato, what's up? Hi, Ed. And so like I feel like I have more flexibility to do something that I might have to fight for with a publisher, or maybe a retailer wouldn't be necessarily interested in this concept or this comic. And so with the third Kickstarter, this one, the Red Hook X Dean Haspiel, which is inspired also by like Warhol X Basquiat or Godzilla X King Kong, and it's either versus or it's with or against, or it creates a tension. I don't exactly even know what that means. But when I arrived at that, I went, oh, that's what the book is. And so what I want to do was something a little bit different here. And for a while now, and I explained it in my campaign, one of the ideas I had is, how Peter Parker gets bitten by a radioactive spider and becomes Spider-Man, right?
Right.
What if it was Spider-Man becomes Peter Parker? And with the Red Hook, I did about 4.5 seasons of a lot of the superhero saga that takes place in New Brooklyn. And I kind of wrapped up the story in a way, and I could tell more Red Hook stories, but I have this character that I've been drawing, and like I was used to like every other day sketching this guy, and then he disappeared on me because I don't have a publisher. And I started thinking, what could I do next? What's the next story for the Red Hook, right? And I started thinking about this idea of like this hybrid where you blur the boundaries between fact and fiction, right? And I have put myself in autobiographical comics. Harvey Pekar has put me in his comics that I have drawn.
Yep.
So when you do real life stories, you put people in there. And in fact, I even mentioned Howard Chaykin in this comic book that's going to be coming out, because what's happening is I'm a big fan of speculative memoir, okay? Where you put yourself in a situation that you've never encountered, and then you try to figure out, well, how would I react in a situation like that, right? And you're kind of doing that with your avatars anyway, Like when you're saying that you thought I was kind of like the Red Hook, I was kind of doing that as well, emotionally I was doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
So here I'm blatantly doing it. And what's interesting for me is not only is it totally a Red Hook story, and there is a little bit of superhero action in it, but it takes place at Sonny's bar. It might as well be at Cheers the whole time. It's just a bar where there's activity, and I explain to the new reader what has happened before, and then I bring them up to date with where it's going now, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's important, as a writer and creator. And then not only am I inserting myself in there, and trying to figure out how I would respond to a situation that I write in here for the Red Hook and the other characters. So that's not necessarily real, but hey, I'm saying it is. But I'm also adding an actual autobio thing that happened to me. I tell a story that actually happened to me inside this weird space,
I'm very excited for it. I think it's going to be, I think people should definitely go and I'm going to be putting in the comments the link for the Kickstarter.
Thank you.
And absolutely, go ahead and check this out. Back it. He's doing, he's going to get funded probably. I'm sure there'll be stretch rewards if something gets there. So, so definitely push him over the top.
Dean, you didn't kill yourself off in this story, did you?
I mean, that's. I wanted to come up with something funny because I wanted to like drop dead all of a sudden or something. Like the power of the pen, right? It's mightier than the sword.
We don't need that. We don't need that.
No.
You gotta keep. We need to keep you around for a while.
Well,
you do a Dick Shawn.
And
you know how Dick Shawn died?
No, how'd he die?
Oh my God, this is beautiful. Excuse me for a second. Dick Shawn was this comedian and actor, stage actor, did a lot of movies, very gifted, very talented guy. And as he got older, he would do, the college circuits. He'd do little speeches on, like hour speeches on how to be funny, and they'd pay him a fortune. So in one of these speeches he was giving, the last of his speeches, he got up there and started talking about timing, which is the hardest thing on earth to talk about. And what he said was, for example, if I were to just fall dead right now, nobody would know how to deal with that because the timing doesn't have an end point. And then he collapsed.
Oh wow!
And everybody laughed their heads off. All those students laughed their heads off because the timing was absolutely perfect.
That's incredible.
Let me tell you something. Were I he, and I'm not, that's how I would want to go.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I would want to go.
That is crazy.
I remember real quick, Dick Shawn. What my favorite moments of his is, and it's a mad world. He's in that one of the characters, and he's just crying about his mama or something like that. I don't remember the narrative, but he's so funny. So, man. So that's basically. I mean, there's more to it to the campaign. The Red Hook has a dilemma. I'm inserted in there. There are other characters. There is a love story in there that also happens. I mean, when I was younger, and you guys remember this, at least I know Mike does. You pick up a comic book, and it was 20 to 24 pages, and they were epic. You could pack a lot into one issue.
You can. You still can. You still can if you want to.
You still can, and that's what I feel like I can do because I take advantage of the shorthand of comics.
Sure.
So
one of the things that I was very conscious about at First Comics, and I carried this over to DC, was trying to give people the same volume of experience from a single story, from a single comic book that you were referring to, Dean. Mm-hmm. And we did that. I tried to do that at least with all of our titles. I think we really succeeded with Grimjack.
Absolutely.
Clearly, we succeeded with Flag. John Sable, yes, but this is your typical My Girl story. This is how that is always going to work,
Right.
And I'm proud of that because the business started to drift away from, 2-part stories that are complete stories, or even 4-part stories. Now they go.
Well, after a while, it becomes impossible, I'm sure, to come up with 12 stories a year per character. So you're going to come up with maybe 2 and have 2 or 3 and make them 4 to 6 issues each, those stories, right?
Which is why today we have 5,000 different Spider-Man titles, 5,000 different Batman titles. We have 8,000 different Joker titles. I don't even know how you do the math on that one.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. It's like these are comic books. It's not heroin.
That's not how I used to think.
I get that. Totally get that.
Dean, I'm going to say it again, and I'll say it again before we get done with this. Please go and check that out on Kickstarter. Support it. There's some really interesting backer tiers that I think are you're experiencing with. So we're looking at. I want to bring in our next guest. He's been waiting
Please.
patiently, and
I have a question for Dan.
Well, yeah, I want you to stick around. We're gonna bring in right now, new to the show. Thank goodness for him being here. Dan Parent for everyone.
Hey. Can you hear?
Hey Dan, welcome.
Hi. Hey guys.
Hey, Dan.
Thanks for being here.
Man.
I
Thanks for having me.
When I was making your video, it was a lot of fun because it's just like I'm just gonna grab all the Archies with everybody else. and you've done so many of that. Your career is just filled with all kinds of great experiences in your time at Archie. I want, for our watchers and viewers and listeners, and how did you get into doing this? How did you get to Archie? What was that journey like for you?
Well, like, a lot of guys in the industry, I went to the Joe Kubert School.
Mm-hmm.
Like now it's been 40 years, which is like, holy shit. But yeah, I went to the Kubert School, and the Victor Gorelick, who was the editor at Archie, would come down and look at portfolios and things. And so I always had like Archie assignments, I always did Archie themed assignments, hoping to sort of get in the door. First year of Kubert School, I actually went to Archie and applied for a job, and my work wasn't good enough at that point. And then the second year, same thing. It was getting better, but it wasn't good enough. And then third year, they came, and finally I had reached that summit where my work was professional enough. So they started giving me like one-page gags, that kind of thing, during my third year of school. So that's how it started. That's how I started doing, freelance assignments while I was still in school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I graduated, and I was like kind of thinking, well, now I got to do something full time because, I can't just, be a freelancer. That was when I actually went to, I got a job offer at Hallmark Cards in Kansas City, and I was going to go work at Hallmark. And then Archie offered me a full-time job in production.
Okay.
So I was like, do I want to move to Kansas, or do I want to stay on the East Coast where I've lived my whole life? So I said, yeah, I'm going to stay, and I started at Archie working in the art department. And so I was, working the days in production and learning all that stuff. Then of course I had to relearn it all like 5 years later when everything went digital and we didn't do pay steps anymore by hand. That's a whole other story. But it was, just kind of was able to go in, and it was a really good time to be there because Dan DiCarlo was still there and Stan Goldberg. And I worked with Dan, and Dan, showed me so much about how to lay out a page. And I think I learned more from him than I did in my years at Kubert School, which Kubert School was fantastic, but I learned a lot on the job. But anyway, that's how it all started. That's how it all began.
But you can do everything. You're a writer, you're a penciler, you're an inker, you're a colorist, you're a letterer. In other words, you make comic books. And you bring enormous innovation to something that you kind of think Archie is pretty much Archie. No. First of all, lots of people have made it more than that. And you have done more than almost all of them put together. You've taken that character and that whole universe, if you will, to into the 21st century.
Well, that was my goal. When I was at Archie for, I think we're in the early 2000s, and I was at Archie for like 15 years at that point. or 60, or like, and I did hit a point where I was like, all right, what do I want to do? Do I want to stay here, or do I want to like really try and do some different things? So I figure I'm gonna try and do some different things here. And they were very receptive about letting me redesign things and work on new books and concepts. And
Sure.
and then just they've been Archie. I have a good relationship with them. They've always been willing to try new things. And then when John Goldwater took over the company in 2008, he was willing to let me do even more stuff. So it's been a good thing. But I definitely did hit a point where you hit like a point when you're there. Something like I said, I was in my early 40s, and I was like, okay, do I want to continue this? Do I want to try something new? And I decided to stick it out and try some new stuff, and it paid off. So
I mean, you're on the Mount Rushmore of Archie. Like, I mean, that's where it is. It's Dan, it's you, and and
I have some big shoes to fill. Obviously, Dan DeCarlo, Bob Montana, Stan Goldberg, Harry Lucy, Dan Schwartz. I mean, there's some big shoes to fill. But
I understand they are.
I'm just happy to even be in the ballpark. I'm just happy to be in the ballpark. I really am.
Bob Montana is one of the great creators in our business, in our medium, and he doesn't get the credit. Now, I know that used to bother the folks at Archie enormously. Not that Bob Montana didn't get the credit, but that Archie didn't get the credit, and they deserved it. But everybody would only talk about Marvel and DC as the only publishers, and I grew up reading Archie as well as the other comics. Comics are comics. They're good comics, they're bad comics, but they're comics. And it pissed me off, and it still pisses me off, that guys like Bob Montana still do not get the level of credit that they deserve.
Yeah, it's true. And also, a lot of it stems from the fact, even Bob got more than other artists. Like, I think Harry Lucy is really, really undervalued, because at least with Bob Montana, he got credit when he did like the Sunday strips. He did the or the comic strip. He did those. So at least you saw his name. So for so many years, Archie didn't give credit to anybody.
Right.
It wasn't until the 80s they started giving credits on books. So a lot of times people didn't even know the names of artists. I didn't even know what Sam Schwartz's name was until the mid 80s when I started seeing, or early 80s when I started seeing his name. So there was many decades, or several decades of times where artists didn't even get their due. But Bob Montana still, he is still undervalued, because he is, one of the amazing artists. And also is, Dan DeCarlo, who was probably my favorite Archie artist, is credited with setting the Archie style, but really he got it from Bob Montana. If you look at the early stuff in the early 50s, Bob Montana really got to that point where he was drawing the girls really cute, and he got that Archie style down. And then Dan was able to take that and kind of push it to the next level. But Bob was something else. He was really great.
That's funny. Dan and I had a long discussion about Bob Montana here in Connecticut at a Pizzeria Uno's, and he was talking about the influence and his approach to Archie, as opposed to all of his other phenomenal work. And he was so intense about it that some of the people who were sitting at the tables around us kind of got scared. They realized, wait a moment, we're talking about Betty and Veronica here? What's going on? What? It was a wonderful evening.
Dan, he put everything into his drawings. I mean, he just, and it obviously shows. I mean, he took it seriously, and it didn't matter if he was upset about something or felt like he was being underpaid. He never took it out on the artwork.
No.
Never took it out on the artwork.
He was always a professional.
Oh my gosh! Oh yeah, and he would redraw things like a lot. Like I would look at something and I thought it was amazing, and he just wouldn't be happy with it. He would just draw it over a couple times until he was happy with it. Whereas some people might have just handed it in, but it had to be up to his standards.
Even when he sued the company. He was still 100% professional. Some people use that as an opportunity to sort of, be childish until they get the
no,
legal
he
bills.
was. He never, even though, it's sad the way it all ended with Dan when his last few years he was in litigation with Archie over Josie and the Pussycats. But he still he still didn't. I wouldn't still characterize him as being bitter. I think he's still, he had his issues with the company, but he wasn't. He still seemed. Yeah, I didn't characterize him as a bitter person.
No,
that's good. I kind of want to talk about some of the things you mentioned. You kind of did some new things. One of the things that is important that you brought and you did at Archie is Kevin, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that I don't think that can ever be understated or overstated. It can never be overstated how important bringing Kevin Keller into comics and at Archie and part of that world means to so many people. What's the feedback you get from that? I mean, like, one of the other things is that, if anybody wants to see Dan Parent in person, just go to a comic show and he's there. So, I mean, that's not a problem. Just go find him, ask him for a commission. Good to go. But, like, what is the feedback?
Very easy to find.
What is the feedback that you've gotten, from fans and readers and stuff like that about the things?
It's always pretty amazing. Even when I, sort of forget about it sometimes, like even at Emerald City this past week, there was still some people who really will always come up and are thankful. They're always like, thank you for Kevin for representation. Even though it's been 15 years now, 14 years since I still get that sometimes. Even with young people, I'll see like a 12 or 13-year-old kid who will be thankful for Kevin. And obviously he probably wasn't just born around that time, but I guess, they know the legacy of Kevin because they may watch Riverdale or they collect the books and they know the history of Archie. So that's really cool. It's really gratifying. And it's just another one reason why when John Goldwater came in 2008 and took over, we were able to do these, like, these changes or these add this diversity to Archie, because when he came in, he was like, why does Archie still look like it's in the 1950s and everyone's like white? And we're like, yeah, I know. Tell us about it. We're, as creators here, there's a few of us creators who have been sort of discussing this ourselves. And, we tried before that to add diversity to Art Riverdale. And, not that we didn't have, different ethnicities in Riverdale, but there was always like a little bit of a pushback on, like, I did a story once where I was writing and drawing it, and it was going to be Betty was like dating Chuck, or African American character, and they had asked me to change it, and I'm like, well, why? And they were like, well, we don't have a problem with it. It's just, some people might have a problem with this, like in the Midwest or in the South. And I was like, that's a really bad reason to not want to do this. This is like, we're catering to like 5 people that might complain about this. So that happened around like in the late 90s, and that always like stuck with me. But
see, this is why Kevin is so important. Archie Comics, the Archie storyline, is really about teenage sexuality and how you grow into it and how you cope with it and how you lead a normal life despite it. And for Kevin to come in there and add the additional gay angle to it is justifying to young people who are going through those types of experiences. And I'm talking about the whole spectrum.
Right.
They see themselves in that character, and they can see the problems that Kevin is going through. They can relate to it in terms of their own doubts and their own insecurities, which, by the way, is what Betty and Veronica is all about. So, I think Kevin's one of the most important characters that's been introduced in comics in the last 2 decades.
Well, I appreciate that, and with Kevin, it was we wanted to, when we introduced Kevin, it had to be like a natural thing, a natural progression. We didn't want it to be like a after school special or a special thing, you know.
Right.
There have been other instances in comics where, you know, gay characters were introduced and then they were sort of forgotten about. But we really wanted to make sure that Kevin was going to be like a lasting part of Riverdale. So when we introduced him, we had, you know, we wrestled with a lot of different storylines. We actually, one of the early stories, I was telling somebody this in Emerald City, like the first initial storyline was that Kevin came to Riverdale and had a thing for Jughead, and like he was kind of like had a crush on Jughead, and then we changed it because we didn't want Kevin to look too like, you know, like, I don't know, desperate or something, or looking for a boyfriend. So with the angle, then we changed it to the storyline where Veronica had the hots for Kevin, and, you know, couldn't figure out that he was gay when everyone else figured it out. But Veronica's so vain and self-centered, she couldn't figure it out. And that was the story we went with. I call it the Three's Company storyline, where like everyone knows what's going on and there's always these misunderstandings. So, yeah.
But when she got clued in, when she figured it all out, she became a wonderful best friend.
Right.
You know?
Right.
The relationship between the two of them is like nothing else I know of in comics.
Right. They formed an instant friendship, to the point where I even did a storyline where Betty gets really jealous of Kevin and Veronica because they become like best friends, and then Betty started feeling left out. So that was an interesting storyline, and then that just opened the world of Archie up to doing. You know, we introduced a lot of new characters around 2010, 2009. Just some characters clicked, some characters didn't. Then I was able to work on a storyline where we had Archie was dating Valerie from Josie and the Pussycats, and the way that started was we were going to do a storyline where Archie was going to be dating Josie from Josie and the Pussycats. And I was supposed to write it and draw it. And it just seemed really boring to me because they were both like redheads. They were both the leaders of their bands. They're both basically like almost the same sort of a character, like boy next door, girl next door thing. So then when I was looking at Valerie, you know, she always was like the smart one in the band. And she always was like the writer. She was like the writer of the songs. And I just thought that was like a more interesting dynamic. And it wasn't just because, you know, they were an interracial couple. Just the personalities just seemed to like mesh better. And so the Archie let me do that storyline, which became a much more interesting story in the end. And that's another story where I don't know if that would have been able to have happened, you know, 20 years ago, you know, but it was a no-brainer to do it this time because the chemistry was so good. And then that storyline actually ended up spilling over into Riverdale. They did an Archie Valerie story in Riverdale. Of course, as Kevin also became like a prominent character in Riverdale.
That's awesome.
And then John, you know, the folks at Archie will even talk about how when we started getting a lot of attention for Kevin, mostly positive attention, and then we were introducing all these new characters and getting, you know, then it really did help when they were pitching Riverdale because we were looking at a much more diverse cast in Riverdale than we'd had in the past.
Right, sure.
So each thing sort of like, you know, moved a step forward into what we were doing, and you know, then of course Riverdale was, you know, a big thing for a while. And
the thing about breaking the ceiling is that you never break the ceiling until just before it's possible to break the ceiling. You're the one who breaks that ceiling, but if you tried it 5 years earlier, or maybe even 5 days earlier, it wasn't going to work. You know?
It would not have even gone anywhere 5 years ago because, I mean, sadly enough, the first owner that happened was the two owners of Archie that I worked with for 25 years or something passed away in 2008. So they died. And then their family members came in and took over. So John Goldwater came in, and John Goldwater was, you know, 20 years younger than his brother, different generation. Worked in the music business, was just more worldly, I want to say. And he was the one who really wanted us to move forward. And, you know, when we were talking about different characters and we were like, you know, can we have a gay character? And he said, I can't think of a reason to not have a gay character. And we were taling about how like Will and Grace was popular and just, you know, pop culture. It was a different world. And And so that's how it happened. But yeah, it would not have happened 3 years before that, 2 years before that.
No, it happened exactly when it could happen.
Right.
And you're the right guy to do it, because not only did you talk them into it, but you pulled it off. If it was a lousy story, nobody would care.
Right. And then there was, most of the Archie fans were on board. There were still some like conservative people who were like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know what we're gonna do. And then when the story came out, they loved it.
Right.
They were, they were like, oh wow, we like Kevin. He's not a threat. Archie's not turning into like an orgy. And it's the only trouble we ever had was not really when Kevin came on board, but then when we did the Life with Archie series where it's set in the future, and then we had future Kevin getting married in that book. That's when gay marriage became legal. And then there was they were selling the book. The book was selling okay. It didn't sold out or anything. And then like 1 million moms that came on board to call for a boycott. Yeah. Then the book sold out because,
of course, excellent, perfect. Keep doing that.
Yeah,
I have another question I want to move to, but I'm going to give Dean the opportunity to play podcast host. You said you had a question.
Actually, Dean has been sitting there finishing off the issue that he's raising the money for.
Right.
So Dean's been making money here.
That's right, baby. Yeah. That's right. No, Dan, good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
I had a quick question. It's rare that I've ever did I create? I would say I created. So when I worked on the Fox, the second one, the second arc, I created Ghost Fox, right? For it took the Fox's son with May and gave him like a super character, and then I did a one shot like a year and a half ago where in the one shot I basically revealed that he's gay, right, and introduced that. I'm not gay. I don't know if I'm allowed to be the guy to do that. I did it. Whatever. It was done very, very respectfully. Whatever. And what's fun is I've not had the opportunity in the Marvel and DC and Archie comics, the franchise characters I have written and drawn a little bit here and there, but mostly the Fox I think was my longest tenure. It's so cool to discover when other people now are writing and drawing the characters. That's what happens. That's what I was doing, right? I was drawing and writing a Fox after I was inspired by Alex Toth and Rich Buckler did it and Erwin Hasten and all that stuff, right? So I picked up are they called the Archie Fun Size or something? What is the digest?
The digest.
The digest,
right? Yeah, and I saw that Ghost Fox and they were incorporating a bunch of the Crusaders characters, into the Archie stories. And it was so cool. And I think you wrote and drew one or maybe a couple or whatever.
I did. I think two of those. Yeah.
You did two of those, and I think I read one of them. It was fun to see that, and I just felt jealous that I wasn't asked to like come in and draw or do anything like that. But whatever, it is what it is, right? And I guess I wanted to ask, if you do another Ghost Fox story for that, or they continue to do that, I would love to collaborate with you in some way.
Yeah,
just to be the artist or something.
Yeah,
if you
absolutely. Yeah. No, that would be great. That'd be great. Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this thing in the digest because we doing more new stories in the digest because again, the digest sell like crazy. Yeah, so that's the place to showcase new stuff.
Right.
And they've been doing a lot of the old Mighty Crusaders characters, mixed in with Betty and Veronica. Like we do the web with Betty and Veronica.
Right.
Or we do characters I have never heard of. I'm just working on a character named Fran Fraser now, who's like a reporter or something. I don't know who the hell she was. So I have to do my research or have Archie send me all the specs on these characters, because I don't know.
Right.
And then the other one was there's Darkling. She's like a witch, Sabrina.
That's right.
And she's a cool character too. I had no idea who the hell she was.
Well, it's funny because
so we're doing Betty, we're doing a Sabrina story, and then we'll have Darkling with her.
Right.
But yeah, they're fun. They're fun. It's fun to do these new things, and I think they want to keep these characters going because obviously they want to keep the the IPs going on these characters, and they want to just keep them, going, the copyrights or whatever.
There was always a separation between the Archie characters and the Red Circle superhero characters with the Mighty Crusaders, that whole world.
Mm-hmm.
And once in a while, there might be a tiny little crossover. And doesn't Archie have a superhero, Captain Pureheart or something? Or
then there's the Archie heroes. There's Pureheart is Archie, right. And then there's Betty is Super Teen. So they have their superhero aliases too. And then in one of them, I did it was like, what the hell is her name? Wow Girl or something? Wow Girl? I don't know, something like that. And then we had Betty and Veronica as their superhero aliases in the story with Wow Girl.
That's
so that
cool.
was something new. So yeah, I'm just they're just throwing these characters at me, and I'm like, I'm having fun drawing them because they're totally
new to me. That's the way to do it, because me and Tom DeFalco were talking about what's the story where with this Archie go into town and discover as a reporter, a roving reporter, and somehow meet each of the characters and rebuild the Mighty Crusaders or something like that and tell the story of. But what I like about what your guys are doing now is you're not explaining anything. You're just putting characters in the same room with each other and doing stuff with them.
And we have Betty and Veronica in the mall, and they're shopping with the web.
For the end. That's all you need to know, right? That's great.
I mean, it's one of the interesting things about Archie. In the past year, 2 years, that I've noticed so many of the characters that they're doing specials or one shots on, whether they're the dark, they're the mystery side, the horror side of things that they're exploring and playing with those characters. Some of the things that they've done there has been excellent. There was an end of the world apocalypse thing that I think Aubrey Sitterson wrote.
Oh yeah, it was Archie Saves the Day or something.
Yeah, some and just playing with them, just going hey, they're Archie characters, or they're or they're Mighty Crusaders characters, or they're Sabrina and her characters and all the stuff over there. Just the concept of, again, just telling a story in a single one and done, and it works. And Archie's doing it.
And I have a tab open for a week now because I'm trying to pull the trigger on whether I get all 14 issues. But I think it was in the 80s. There was the Blue Ribbon.
Yeah.
One anthology series that was basically
Buckler.
Had a couple of different stories of characters that were done in ones, basically. There might have been one crossover story, and Trevor.
I remember the guy who had the gills. There was one of the one of the Blue Ribbon characters. I think it's
there's 14 issues of this, and I'm thinking. I mean, I don't know what
I think the Rich Buckler cover
is, but I just wish they would bring back this concept of a blue ribbon where you get different writers and artists to play with the toys, as it were, and tell cool little stories that are just done in one. And I don't know, I just feel but again, it costs money, and you got to try to deal with the retailers picking this up and coming, and you got to come out with it consistently. It's hard to do these one shots that come out, which is why I guess the digest works really well, because it's probably 90% reprint and 10% new stuff, right? So it's affordable.
I mean, the digests are just they just move along like a locomotive. They just don't slow down. I mean, even during COVID, when everything shut down, publishing basically shut down for a couple of months for everybody. The digest kept on going along, and then the sales were going up because during COVID, the only place you could go was a supermarket or Walmart.
Yeah, right. You can give your child a 400-page digest book, and they're probably not going to complain for a few hours. The beautiful thing about these superhero stories, these sort of, I don't want to say crossovers because they're not, that are going on now, is that it is absolutely a have your cake and eat it too experience. You're keeping these characters alive, including characters that not just you hadn't heard about or I haven't heard about, but people who read them at the time forgot about them. How many appearances has young Dr. Masters made? More than in the original days. I know that.
Oh my God. I'm drawing a young Dr. Masters story right now.
Yeah.
As we speak, and I didn't know what the hell this character was either. I had to go back and look, and there's hardly any material on him. I think he only had 3 issues or something.
Yeah, I bought the first issue off the newsstand along with the first issue of Archie's The Shadow, which, by the way, was written by Jerry Siegel. It was just a weird, yeah. But Archie's, that's great. They have all of these characters, and they're bringing them out, letting people play with them. If they want to use them later, if they go somewhere, terrific. If not, well, they've been around since 1940. They can come back. It's fine.
And I think it's Mark Waid that cites an Archie comic story, which is either 5 to 8 pages, 5, 6, 8 pages, whatever, that you train yourself. I think he trained himself to learn how to write comics by thinking in terms of an Archie format, because you set it up, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end usually to all those stories, and you do it in a concise way, Yeah. And it is an art form. It is harder to do, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And to figure out.
When I started writing 5-page stories, my early days, I always was like going, I'd always ask, can I do this as a 7-pager? I never could time it right. Now I can. Now I do it so much, but I was always going over, and I always having to rewrite them and rework them. Yep. And so it is a challenge to get a concise story in 5 pages or 6 pages. Yeah.
Even the Fox story I did, the one shot a year and a half ago, or whatever. I originally was given 20 pages. And then they approved the story and everything, and I wrote the whole thing out as 20, and they're like, "Oh, we can only give you 12 now." I'm like, "What?" And I figured it out, and it still worked really well, I think. So less is more sometimes, right? I guess.
Dean, that's how they used to do the Ed Sullivan Show. A comic would have a perfectly timed 4-minute bit, absolutely perfect, and it just sang, and then just before they go on, they say, "You're down to 2.5."
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah, and they would do that all the time.
Oh, there's the blue.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, this is the one I had. This when I was a kid. I remember this one very, very distinctly, and I think I have recollected 3 copies of it, because every time I see it, I just buy it.
Right. Yeah, that was a fun series, man, and I really think that there might be room for that. And again, you'd be when we were talking earlier about the 500 Batmans and Jokers and all these comics, right? I've always thought this, or at least in the last decade or so, where if I was to become the publisher of DC or Marvel, I would have one continuity comic per character or team, right? Just one. The one X-Men comic for the continuity and the not issue 9,000, right? Or whatever. The other X-Men comics or Batman or whatever, or Spider-Man, would be getting let's see what Dan Parent does with the X-Men for a one-shot. And it's not continuity, because who gives a shit? What is Dan going to do with the X-Men? You know what I'm saying?
But you have to package it. So that's the problem, Dave. You need to be able to sell it in a bookstore. So you got to make it into a trade paperback.
Right.
So you call it but you collect some of those, maybe 5 of those, right? And maybe you do a series of auteur-oriented franchise comics. I hear what you're saying in terms of the marketing.
I mean, I'm just throwing economics into this conversation.
No, I hear you.
So you do miniseries. I mean, there's plenty of ways.
I agree. I think I'm not trying to say it's a bad idea.
But what's funny is a super fan might be either I want to see that, or they'd be like, is that a real Batman comic? Or that's not a real one, right? That's the Dan Parent fake one, right? Whatever, get over yourself. It's an opportunity to get some interesting ideas, and especially if you take it out of continuity. Paul Pope, right, did Batman 100 or whatever, right? Great. Or you get that, or is Dark Knight canon? Is Frank Miller's Dark Knight canon's Batman? No. Right? And one of the biggest selling Batman comics of all time.
Year 1 is. But Dark Knight isn't. And they're doing that. Jason Aaron's Off-World is not canon Batman.
Right. So, but I guess it has to be Jason Aaron and I love Jason Aaron, but name value. And listen, I still love, I come from the indie world. I still love the Bizarro collection where you get indie guys to play with the toys, or Strange Tales when Marvel did their Bizarro, But but whatever. I'm not a publisher, so what the hell am I talking about?
Yeah, I wish they would do that too. I would love to do like a Legion of Superheroes book, like a one shot or just like a special. I would love to do something like that.
That's
But they should let more creators that you wouldn't expect on a book like that doing stuff like that. And it could be a massive failure or it could be a huge hit, but
right.
chances are people are going to check it out to see either way. If it's
Right,
like a one shot.
Or even if you bring back the backup feature, so you have the regular team doing, and maybe they're doing an 18-page comic, and then there's a 5-page backup or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
DC had been playing around with that lately, and they do that every once in a while, and that's fine. I mean, the backup stories have been a wonderful place also to break in new talent, introduce new talent. So I'm a big fan of that. But the fact is, this conversation assumes that publishers make decisions based upon good ideas or fact or logic.
Right.
But the publishers, even today, last hours, maybe weeks, and then they go off somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, how many different owners has DC had in the last 10 years, 15 years? At least 3 major owners.
Mm-hmm.
Marvel, okay, it's Disney now, and that's enough. You can just say it's all Disney now. And if the Deadpool movie doesn't do well, it will be all Disney now. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But it's corporate America, and corporate America never works well with creators. We're the antithesis of good business because we're not safe, and nobody makes anything great and new by being safe.
That's true.
Superman and Spider-Man sat in a drawer. Superman for years. The Hulk was canceled and brought back a year or two later after some development in other books. People don't know, and that's great. That's fine. I realize that there's a lot of money on the line, and people are going to have to deal with that. They're going to have to cope with making that work. Money doesn't come out of nowhere. But if you make your nut, if your return on investment is safe and adequate, protect the species, do good stories.
Yeah. I think that's one of the advantages that I've had working with Archie is that we're not owned by any corporation. We're still a family-owned business.
Yeah.
That's been that way for 80 years, and I think it would be a different story if someone like Warner Brothers came in and bought us out. I think my job would probably change drastically because who knows what would happen if a corporation bought us out? They might just buy us out for the property, and comic book publishing to many of these corporations wouldn't be even worth it. So. So who knows what would happen? Who knows what the dynamic would be is if they came in? Oh, there's a Legion picture. Right
That's it. That's great. The first time I was ever at Archie's offices, John Goldwater was still around. I mean, he was coming in like once or twice a week, and that was kind of cool to meet one of the original guys, even though he might not have been the most pleasant person I'd ever met in my life. Still, it was quite an honor and experience to do that. And the families that owned MLJ, that started that company, are the families, by and large, that still own it and run it today.
Correct, yeah.
And that is what that's where comics works. A comic book publishing company is never, on its best day, going to make enough money to impress the folks at Discovery or at Disney.
Right.
It'll make... Your best day will make less money than their worst movie.
Right.
It's just that simple.
Yeah.
I don't think the match is right. I think we were always a mom and pop operation.
Yeah, I think with Archie, I think there was a time, like I guess probably like the late '60s, early '70s, when they were at their peak. You know, when the TV show was popular. I think Archie was the #1 comic in 1969, I think, or '68. It was the top selling book. I think a lot of it because of cartoon and Sugar and all that stuff. But so there probably was a time where Archie was, well, I know they had, from what I understand, there had been offers in some of the years about them, corporations trying to buy them out. But I will say one thing: when I was, when I started working there, I had never met the I think John Goldwater was still alive, the first John Goldwater, but I never actually met him. I think he was pretty sick at that time when I started. So it was Richard Goldwater, his stepson, and or no, his son. It was his son, and then Michael Silverclight, who was the son of the other. So they were the ones I worked with for for good solid like 20 years. And I will say one thing: they had their issues, and I had they could be difficult and stuff, but they loved Archie, and they were very protective of. They were very protective of anybody messing with the character or damaging the character. And so even when I thought they were a little over protective of Archie sometimes, and not offending anybody with storylines and stuff like that, I think that. They were very, very, they really had a love for the character, and I think that's what they really protected the property. And they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. As far as creating the digest format in the '70s, when I guess people told them it wasn't going to work. They made that their main publishing source. Because that's where they've made the majority of their money. So they did a lot of smart things, but I think because it was a family run company, it did have that mom and pop feel, and I think that they protected it.
There was this cute thing at their Mamaroneck offices where the two publishers, Silverclight and Goldwater, had adjoining offices.
Yes.
And if you had the door open and you looked to the left and you saw one office, and you look to the right and you saw the other office, you were looking at the same thing. Yes. They were just mirror images. And That's then true. If you went downstairs to their cars to go out to lunch, mm-hmm. the two of them would fight over whose car you should go into. By the way, I think this is all endearing. I'm not putting anybody down here.
Yeah.
But they had the same exact SUVs. The same exact SUVs. And they're fighting over who should
and they buy like a new car every year. They would just the cars didn't even have time to get used. Those are the days when like I know Victor Gorelick, like Victor got a he had a company car. Circulation manager would have a car. Like that was the days when if you had like a title at Archie, you got a car. Those days are gone.
Well, I look, you can't even get comps anymore. But I loved Vic. I have to point out, I loved Victor.
Victor was Victor was great.
He was just wonderful.
Victor's the reason I have a career. He's the one that hired me from Kubert School. He was. I really owe a lot to Victor. He let me. For the first decade, he was pretty hard on me. Like I remember some times where I really had a hard time pleasing him with my work. But he softened up over the years, and we became really good friends. And he's another guy too, where like. His dedication to Archie was so intense. Like he just breathed Archie. And again, when he was there, he worked there for 65 years. I mean, he passed away around 80, close to 80, and started working there when he was like 15. So I mean, that's 65 years. I mean, that's
I know that's amazing.
Yeah. And he knew everything about Archie. He knew where all the bodies were buried. he knew every story. He knew every scandal, and he would tell me he told me some really interesting stuff. And someday when I'll write a book and I'll I'll spill it all then
exactly.
when I don't care anymore.
I once made a joke at a convention that I was writing a tell-all book, and a few folks in the industry got very nervous. I was just making a joke, I'm going to do a
writing it.
tell-all book, and Bob, of course, ever since has been saying, "Write the book, write the book." But,
I'm right. Don't worry about it. You just
I
keep
see.
talking. You just keep talking.
But I've been telling them the stories.
Yeah. So I want to change. We're going to come back to Archie for a minute, but I want to talk about Kitty. You're people who do you do other things
Yes.
other than Archie?
I do.
You recently wrote for DC.
I
which
did.
was fantastic.
Thank you.
But Die Kitty Die is your creator-owned project.
Yep.
That you do with Fernanda Ruiz.
Yep.
How did this come about, and what's next for Kitty?
Well, we want to do another Kitty Kickstarter, but it's just a matter of time.
Right. Sure.
Because as Dean knows, Kickstarters take up a lot of time.
Yep.
And I've done 5 Kickstarters now, or 5 or 6. I don't know. Okay. And after each one, you need like a vacation to recover from after that, and then the real work begins. So as there's like this thing with Kickstarters where they're very rewarding creatively, but then there's the intense work that goes along with them. So we want to do another Kickstarter, but like Fernando is teaching, and now he's working full time at the Kubert School now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm doing conventions all the time, so it's just a matter of us syncing up and doing the next one. So we've been telling people the last couple of years we're going to do the next one, and we've been pushing it off. So we will do another one. But Kitty started we did it in 2015 was the first one. 2016. We just we were on a plane. We were going to Denver Comic-Con, or no, Dallas, and we were just sitting there sketching stuff up, and we were like, we need to just do something that's that's ours. It's like creator owned, that we can just do. And so we just started coming up with ideas, and we were just talking, like this. We'll do this. Do something about like a parody of the comic industry sort of thing. So basically, the character of Kitty is she's this like character that this comic company publishes who's just lost her appeal over the years. She's not selling anymore. They don't know what to do. So of course, the publishers decided to kill her off because that's how you get notoriety and you boost some sales. Mm-hmm. So then the plot is they've got all the other characters in the company who have been floundering and unused too. So whoever can kill her off will, also regain popularity and maybe get their own book again. So it's sort of like the characters obviously are, enmeshed with the supposed real life characters too. They're not like fictional characters, like Roger Rabbit kind of thing. They just kind of like exist amongst the real people.
Sure.
So anyway, we drew it up and then decided to see what we would do with the Kickstarter, knowing nothing about how to do a Kickstarter. And thank God my friend Giselle Lagasse up in Canada, who does her own Menage a Trois book. She
is so wonderful, and she's a master. She's
a fantastic artist, but she's also a fantastic businesswoman. Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, she's so smart. And fortunately, when she's my friend, so when I was doing the Kickstarter, and she had at that point done several extremely successful Kickstarters. I mean,
yes, I have some of them.
Oh, they're amazing. Yeah, I mean, her first Kickstarter, I think she made like $170,000. This is like 12 years ago, and so she does 1 or 2 a year, and so she's set just from her Kickstarters, and she's lucky too because she Menage a Trois and all her other strips, Pixie Tricks comics are all online comics, so all her Kickstarters are just compilations.
Sure.
So she's not having to like draw and do new material. She just does new covers and just compiles what she's doing on her strips. So she was a big help because I was doing everything wrong with doing the Kickstarters, and she would just come in and tell me what to do and how to do the stretch goals and all that. So she was a huge help. And but anyway, the first Kickstarter was really successful. and we were able to do like 4 issues, and we were able to do a couple of specials, and then we put it all in the trade. We were lucky enough to get Darwin Cook to do the cover of our first book, because I knew Darwin and from conventions, and I was friends with him and his wife was an Archie fan, so that's how I got to know them. Darwin was wonderful, and sadly, when he was working on that cover, that was like about the last thing that he did, because it was like on his drawing table, and then he wasn't able to finish it. So Michael Cho inked it.
Oh wow!
Who they have very similar styles. So that was like kind of bittersweet, because we were excited to have that Darwin piece, but it all came about when he was shortly before he passed away. Around the same time that the book came out.
Yeah, it's amazing how you're not the first person to tell us one of those. The things that Darwin did in his last days were heroic, for lack of a better word. Just like you're not the first person who told us about something that happened like behind the scenes when he was sick. That he didn't, and congratulations, but like it's wonderful. I'm a big fan. We always back the Kitty books, and we're looking forward to more of it.
And what was even amazing about Darwin too was that he was sick, and he was like contacting me, and he's like is it okay if I get Michael to ink this? And I'm having some health issues. Like he was he could have just not done it. He could have just said I'm just too sick. I'm not going to bother with this this guy's Kickstarter. But he it was like committed to it, and he to do it, and which was even more that much more to us that happened. But thank you about the kind words about the Kickstarter or Kitty, because it is a labor of love. And then when we were able to do the next series, we did like Hollywood and Heaven and Hell, different series. Mm-hmm. We were really able to just we just created this entire fake universe of comic characters in this company. So basically we just kind of drew on things that we loved growing up. Probably the most influence you'll see is like a lot of Harvey Comics reference, because I love Harvey Comics like more than anything. So I was always taking like Asper and Haas, making like our own versions of them as other characters. And then as far as any Archie influence, Kitty's sort of like a cross between like Cheryl Blossom and Sabrina anyway. So that was sort of like our in our style is still that has that Archie feel to it. But we were able to get a lot of fun people involved, and it was it was fun. And doing a Kickstarter was a total education.
Right.
Because I was like, then they were on the third Kickstarter, we did a Kitty statue, a figurine.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that was like the nightmare. I'll never ever do another statue again. It was just a nightmare. It was such a nightmare. And I know Giselle has great luck doing her figures, but that should have been its own Kickstarter in itself, separately. It's just its own.
Sure.
We had it as part of the rewards for the book. So it was just a bunch of like, we were dealing with this Chinese company going back and forth. There was a language barrier. There was the shipping issues. It was cost overrun. I mean, like it cost twice as much as we thought it was going to cost. So it was quite a challenge. But the figure came out beautifully. We were really happy once we got it. We were really happy with it. But that was another learning curve I don't want to go through again.
It is we've been doing this a while, and I appreciate it. We are getting to the question of the week, which is what we've started doing this year. Go ahead, Mike.
May I plug Warren Kremer for a second? You were
Warren Kremer. Oh my gosh.
You were mentioning Harvey, and I did this whole thing about overlooked Archie folk. I therefore feel committed to pointing out that this man was a genius in a land of underrated geniuses.
Oh, absolutely. You were so right. He's actually making it into the Eisner Hall of Fame this year.
Yes.
So thank God. But no, Warren Kramer is well, basically he was like the Dan DeCarlo of Harvey Comics, where he did almost all the covers. He did so, I don't know. I was talking to somebody, Sid, what's his name? Sid. Anyway, he would do like he could do like 7 or 8 covers a day.
Sid,
and he would Sid Jacobson.
Yeah, he was the editor.
Warren Kramer could do like 5 or 6 covers a day. He could do like a 5-page story in a day, and it looked beautiful. He was like so fast. But for like years, I mean, for like, you know, when I was a kid in the 70s buying Harvey Comics, they were putting out like 30 or 40 titles a month, most of them Richie Rich titles. And, you know, Warren Kramer did every cover. And Ernie Colon did a lot of work too.
Ernie did some beautiful stuff. But
yeah,
if you look at Warren's little dot covers,
oh yeah,
you just went through like 50 of them at random, you would have this man committed. That's how brilliant they were. It's Little Dot, the most neurotic character in the history of comics.
Absolutely. she's clinically insane.
Right.
I mean, oh yeah. I mean, she would actually like hit herself in the head with a hammer just to see dots.
She was the one who killed Richie Rich, and that's how we got Casper.
That could be. That could be. But no, she was crazy. Well, and she was like, yeah, she was a totally crazy. And then Little Lotta was another crazy character too, because I mean, she would just like eat everything in sight. And then she had super strength, and she'd be lifting like tanks and lifting things, you know, crazy stuff. And then they were best friends, Little Dot and Little Lotta. So the craziest like team up.
I know, but the beauty of it is that when we were like 6 years old and we read that stuff, it didn't seem that weird. We had to grow up to realize how incredibly weird that was. Well, in my case, I had to read Dean's stuff, but.
Well, then there was this book called Little Dot's Uncles and Aunts, where every issue she had all these crazy uncles and aunts, and then you're thinking like, how many uncles and aunts does she have? And her grandparents must have been like doing it like bunnies, because she had just hundreds of aunts and uncles.
So you're of the opinion that those aunts and uncles were all like part of a family?
Well, because a lot of times she'd be at her house, and then the mom would be like, "Oh, here's your Uncle Doofus from," and it was like her. So they would always be made out as family members. I'm hoping they were, I mean, I hope they were just family friends, because I just don't know how anybody could procreate that much.
Yeah, I don't know.
But when you're a kid, you don't think about that. When you're a kid, you're just looking at the funny aunts and uncles. You're not thinking about how they got there. So.
Well, was it last week when I said that Hot Stuff number 3 was my favorite?
Hot Stuff number 3 was definitely one of the answers to the question of the day.
Yeah,
and this is Warren Kramer art right here.
Yeah. Oh, I'm such a fan of his.
Oh, he's amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I already know about your Harvey fandom.
Well, you know, I have a Harvey Comics room in my house. That's Harvey Comics stuff. I'm probably as insane as Little Dot. I am like obsessed with Harvey Comics. I have put pictures on Facebook before. I'll share those with you. I'll find them and share them. Cool. But yeah, I've got a whole like a Harvey Comics like racks with just all Harvey Comics, and I've got like glass shelves of just filled with Harvey Comics merchandise.
That's fantastic.
Not normal.
I do have a Joe Simon, Dick Tracy cover. Which I'm really proud of, and people look at it and go, "Wow, did Chet Gold do that?" And I said, "No, it's Joe Simon, Simon and Kirby." And people will go like, "No, I mean it's Dick Tracy cover." And say, "Yeah, that's what I'm talking about."
In fact, like 6 feet away from me, I have I'll show you this.
Fanboys, what can you do?
Wait, but this is what we get. This is what the show's about.
Little Lotta Foodland cover.
Oh, let's see. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's
and then
it.
I've got my. I haven't even framed this one yet. It's a Hot Stuff cover.
Oh,
wow.
In the 70s.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And then our lovely little Dot.
That's
Original.
crazy.
Yeah.
These
are just, these are sitting here next to
Is
my.
that a cover, or is that just an illustration?
No, it's a cover. They used to do a lot of the covers small. They didn't do them like.
That's crazy.
And it's weird because the interiors were always like large, like 11 by 17, but their covers were always small.
Wow.
The original size.
You know, Jack Cole did Plastic Man, same size as reproduction. He did repro size.
Mm-hmm.
And people,
I don't understand that.
You don't understand that.
I don't understand that. How do you do that?
You draw small.
Yeah, I don't know why they. I don't understand that either, because the Harvey Comics
pages,
pages, actually, I think they were bigger than 11 by 17.
They were
big.
They were.
The boards were. I'm not sure the imagery was, but the boards were.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Once I found out that people drew bigger and it was reduced to print size, everything made more sense. Like I'm like, oh, okay, I get that now that how you can have backgrounds and things, because how are you going to draw in that tiny little space?
Mm-hmm.
Like all these things.
Joe Kubert hated the reduction, but it allowed him to work faster.
Sure.
With no deterioration of quality whatsoever. Huge Kubert fan. And he still hated it. It's like, you're making more money, you're doing great work, and you hate it. And he says, yeah, I'm just going to teach.
All right. I want to get to the question of the day, so we have some time. It won't take too long. But we
gotta wake Dean up.
Oh, he'll come in. He'll come in.
Okay.
So we do this thing I don't tell Mike, and we have a question a day, and everybody has to answer. Today we're theming it. So and this may put Dan on the spot. It may get Dan fired, but who is your favorite Archie Comics character?
Oh. Wow. That's really hard.
And any Archie Comics character counts.
I always have like a 3-tiered answer to that. Well, because everyone thinks I should say Kevin, because I created Kevin, but I always go back to like my initial Archie, like fandom response, and I would say Jughead.
Okay. What are you going to say, Dean?
Well, I almost want to send it to you, and then you can put it up.
Well, tell me and I'll find it.
Real quick. No, it's on my laptop because I don't think it's. Well, you guys, Mike should answer, and then
go ahead. You say.
Let me see if
I would go along with Jughead because I think most people would probably go along with Jughead. But my favorite Archie character is the original Cosmo the Merry Martian.
Oh, Cosmo, yeah.
Because I have no doubt that they did this book because the Shmoo was so successful, and he kind of looked like the Shmoo. But the Shmoo was successful because he looked like this giant, pure white penis monster, and Cosmo imitated that. And I was like 8 years old when it came out, and I was just blown away. It was perfect for an 8-year-old.
And anybody who's watching can pop their favorite Archie Comics character into the comments if they want to. And we'll put those up for you too. So, I'll go. This is hard for me because there's not an Archie Comics character that I don't like. And I get also partial. I love the Red Circle characters. I remember we were talking about when they did the blue ribbon line. I was enthralled with that, and then when this thing called Impact was happening at DC, I was like, oh, I can't wait for this. And then they blew it up. But
I still get fan mail.
I know that. You did
That's
a fantastic job.
That is so
You did a
weird.
fantastic job. I'm gonna go with Veronica. There's something about her that I'm not a villain person, so I don't consider her necessarily a villain, but she's bitchy. She's definitely got her own stuff, but even the fact that her and Kevin have a great relationship is totally within the character of Veronica. She may be a bitch, and she is a bitch, but there's that great part about her that you just love to watch her.
Well, I mean, she has a heart.
Apparently, Jen agrees. So, and we'll put up Betty for Sherry.
Wow.
Sherry's right. Yeah.
So, listen, let me tell you, your Betty as Farrah is like one of the greatest drawings in the Archie universe ever.
Oh. Nice. Yeah, that was one of those variant covers that did very well. But I prefer. I definitely, if I hadn't said Jughead, I would have said Veronica would have been next, because Veronica. I mean, I drew the Veronica book for 200 issues, or well, not all 200, but like 150 of the 200 issues, and and that was my first book was Veronica. My first cover was a Veronica cover. My first solo book was Veronica. So I definitely like Veronica more. I mean, I love Betty too. Don't get me wrong, but Veronica is a much easier character to write and draw, just because it's just more, you can do more stories with someone that's slightly villainous, just easier. So.
It's also, I would think it's not ever having done this. I would think it's easier to do a Betty story when you're playing off of Veronica.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of biased, and Archie's told me this before too, because when I do Betty and Veronica stories, usually Veronica comes out ahead, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. Usually Betty is supposed to be the moral one who comes out ahead. So I used to get told Victor would talk to me a couple times where he's like, your obvious preference for Veronica is showing, because she always like tramples over Betty. So I have to be conscious of that. Yeah, I love Betty too. It's just, I prefer Veronica. So.
Okay, so
here told me not to say that too. Like Michael Silverclick told me once, he was like, don't say who you prefer. Just keep it.
Right. That's why I asked.
Like, well, it's so obvious, that I prefer Veronica that I'm. It's hard to hide. So.
All right. Here's Dean's favorite Archie character.
Whoa! Oh, that's great.
Cool.
That's great.
Awesome.
I want to read that.
I gotta be honest. Yeah. I don't know much about Moose, but I feel like there's a story there, man. There's a story. Mm-hmm. He comes off as one thing, but he could be another.
Right. There's a story around that cover. There's at least half a dozen at least stories that come to mind instantly when I'm looking at that cover piece.
And by the way, if you notice, I took a drawing because I did a Life with Archie cover. And my first cover I submitted was, do you see this background drawing, this layout I did?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I had a great, they rejected it for a very good reason, because of Kevin Keller. And I was suggesting two gay relationships here. Betty and Veronica are pushing a baby carriage, and Jughead is coming home to Archie. And they were like, it's cute and everything, but that would do a disservice for the gay character. And it's like, not that I was making fun of, I was just positing a different kind of worldview. Right. And I respected that. And so I did something else. But then I reused it for this. This is a Baltimore Comic-Con for when they celebrated Archie one year.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So I kind of repurposed that, and I did Moose just for the fun of it. And but I feel like there's a heartbreaking story for Moose to be told.
I mean, I think we should. I would run and read that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I think we should set up this meeting so that we can.
So yeah, and actually, I think I was talking to Mark Waid about it. He kind of had an idea of what to do for like a Moose one shot at one point. But yeah, whatever. I mean, maybe that's something in the cards someday. I don't know. Maybe we can collaborate. Dan, I'd love to do something with you, even if it's a little 5-page Ghost Fox story or something.
We'll make that happen. We'll make it happen. I'm on it. I'm on it.
Thank you.
That's great.
That'd be fun.
That's great. History is just
right here. You saw it happen right here.
Live.
Right here.
Yeah.
This is why we do this, right? You're
giving us work. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what we want. We want people making comics. Making comics because comics are good. Read more comics. On that note, I am going to be at a show this week. I'm going to be at Planet Comic Con in Kansas City. And if you find me, I will have Pop Culture Squad pins on me. And if you find me and say the secret word, we're going to go secret word all weekend is going to be read more comics. So if you find me and tell me read more comics, you get a pin. So that and we'll post that on our socials so everybody do it. But
Bob,
that's what we want to do. We want people reading comics.
You see that Batman piece?
Yes. Is
that
that
I'm
yes.
pointing to?
Yes.
That's Rick Stacy.
Well, okay.
You're going to see Rick at the
I am
show.
going to. I'm going to bring my recorder and I'm going to get all of the dirt.
Oh,
and Bob, I have a different
you need a few
thing that I do at cons is I go up to people and I say, "Give me money," and,
and they do
their wallet and give me money. You know, like, and I might give them a comic or something. It depends. You know, it doesn't really matter.
I tell people to give Chaykin money.
Oh,
because no, he doesn't. It's not that he needs it. I mean, it depends on he's happily married, so it should be okay. But it confuses him. It just
kind of
confuses him.
Oh, is that Russ? Hey, what's up, Russ? Yeah, there's something lovable about Moose. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Very
like,
lovable.
when was the last time it was in an Archie comic? Does he show up anymore?
Oh yeah.
I've actually just drawn a couple Moose stories recently.
Oh,
he's another one that we're doing Moose solo stories. We've been doing those in the digest recently.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to look at it from the perspective of what does Midge see in him?
Right.
Because that, if you think about it, that is a relationship that you wouldn't expect to see. So obviously there's something there for her. So there's a lot of room there to develop.
Yeah. And then there was always the old stories where Midge was like, with Reggie, and then Moose would like clobber like Reggie for hanging out with Midge. But I was like, well, Midge is kind of hanging out with Reggie, kind of playing both sides there sometimes.
That's true, but you still want to see Reggie get hit over the head.
Wait, you just said it. You just said it. Instead of Betty and Veronica, it's Moose and Reggie.
There you go.
Oh my God. What the hell is happening? And they're handcuffed at the wrists, right? And they're on the run. Sorry.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Broken out of prison. I don't know.
Wow. There's an adventure.
Moose and Reggie, man. Damn.
This can be a rough room. This could be a rough room.
Wait, didn't Tom DeFalco do a 4-issue miniseries about Reggie's dog or something like that?
Oh yeah, they did. It was yes, it was what was it called? Reggie and Me. There was a Reggie and Me miniseries. But there was a Moose. I think it was a one shot.
No, but the Reggie and Me is the dog story, and I remember it was brilliant.
Reggie and Me. Yeah,
that was great. Okay.
Yeah, I think Sandy Gerald drew it.
Yep.
I quite enjoy Tom's work.
He's great.
But certainly at Archie, and I quite frankly, I'm really happy to see when he does a new story, for the digests. It's sort of nice. It's like old home week, I like that.
And he's done a few of the Mighty Crusaders mashup stories with the Archie characters too, and they're fun.
Right, yeah, absolutely. I think we're running out of time, Bob.
We have hit it. You guys, this has been a wonderful experience. we will have you both back again, probably separately, maybe together. Dean, you're always welcome. Dan, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was fun.
Make sure
It was a good time.
you go to the comment section wherever you're watching this. There's a link in there to the Dean's Kickstarter. Go back it. You'll love it. It'll be great. There's also options if you haven't seen, or if you don't have Billy Dogma and Jane Legit.
Oh, the first two, yeah.
There's options you can get those through the Kickstarter as well. They're great books.
Thank you,
Dan,
guys.
you're gonna be in DC this weekend. You're gonna come down here. I'm gonna leave because I don't want to be near you. And and then you're going to go to the city the following week, right?
Awesome Con and then Le Mans.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Dean is going to be at Ithacon with Bob and me.
Yes.
Dan is busy somewhere else at another convention, I'll bet.
Probably at C2E2.
Oh,
C2E2. Yeah.
That's my hometown. I love everything about Chicago except C2E2. Bob knows that firsthand. But Bob and Dean and I are going to spend our time at Ithacon mostly making fun of Walt and Wheezy Simons. Now, nobody makes fun of the Simonses. So the three of us have a hell of a challenge ahead of us.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
I'm not making fun of them.
Behind their backs.
I'm not getting caught in that.
Little, right?
Okay, so also I just want to give a shout out for next week. Next week we are going to have a show here. We're going to have Jeremy Hahn is going to be on, and same time, 8:00. We're gonna talk about him. We're gonna have a special appearance by Paul Eza, who has his first Kickstarter coming out. He's gonna join us early and talk to us. So do you guys know Paul?
No.
Well, I know you don't, but he's Constance's husband.
Oh,
Paul. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's gonna join the show next week. It'll be his first podcasting appearance, so that'll be fun.
Cool.
And again, we're going to talk to Jeremy
great.
Hahn. I'm going to see Jeremy this weekend and prep him so that we're all ready to go. And you guys, thanks so much for being here. We really had a great time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys.
Great to see you guys.
Had a great time.
Yep.
I'm gonna pull you guys out
Wonderful
and we'll catch up later. Thanks so much.
See you later. Good night.
Good night. Wow. That was
What
cool.
a show. That was
Cool. That was
I had
cool.
a great time, Mikey. We'll do this again next week. And
who would have thought that we'd spend 2 hours talking about Archie and Harvey comics? Now,
listen,
I would have thought that, but I never would have thought I'd get away with it.
Yeah, it was good. It was fantastic. I had a great time. We'll be back next week in your faces, in your ears. Be here 8:00 Eastern, 5:00 Pacific. We'll see you later.
Thanks, folks.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?